I am so excited to have this conversation. This is truly a very special treat, and I don't want to mess this up. So I am going to be looking at my notes. Today, my special guest on Otissa and Company is Dr. Joanne Scillitoe, and she is the Endowed Chair of Entrepreneurship at Cal State Northridge. She's the executive director for the Center of Social and Technology Entrepreneurship. She is the real deal. And she has a very illustrious academic career, also a professional career, and revered for articles and different things like that. A graduate of Rutgers University, as well as a dear person to me who I have grown to really love talking to. We have some very fun conversations, and I'm so excited to be able to bring her to anyone who is listening to this conversation. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you so much just for taking the time. I know your schedule is extremely busy, but you heard me asking and you were like, I will do that. So, my introduction to Dr. Joanne, I call her affectionately Dr. Joanne, but my introduction to her was an initial conversation to be a guest speaker for the Launching Angelinos program that Cal State Northridge helps to sponsor and facilitate. And it's a wonderful program. I'm a mentor for, a budding entrepreneur, and just really a beautiful program. I wish we all had it when we were trying to start our businesses. So that is how I came to know her and Kenny through the Association of the Valley Economic Alliance. I want to give Sharon a shout out because she is the one who connected us and said, you got to meet them. And she was right. And I'm very, very thankful that we have been able to blossom into a lovely relationship here. So thank you, Dr. Joanne.
Thank you so much, Atissa. It's been a pleasure getting to know you as well, learning about what you do, and thank you for inviting me today.
Absolutely. We're going to go ahead and dig in. I know you've written a lot of articles because we've talked about doing some things with the articles and things like that. But tell the people some other things that maybe they don't know that I didn't say.
Yeah, this is a second career for me as an academic. I used to work in the biological and chemical sciences before I went back for my PhD. But I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship, particularly technology entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. I've been publishing most recently articles and books in the space of social justice, entrepreneurship, and technology management. And the Launch Angelinos project, working with Notre Dame, sponsored by Coca Cola, is in that space, particularly social impact. That's a program for entrepreneurs who are struggling with economic adversity. And we love those kinds of programs getting into the community. So I love, as a researcher, to also apply what I've learned through the research process to practical applications for entrepreneurs in our community.
Yes. And she is a
So,
wealth of knowledge. I mean, a major strategist when it comes to small business or just business in general. I don't even want to say just, I think just business in general. And that's why I love talking to her because I get to ask and kind of pick her brain a little bit. And she is happily sharing with me different things. So I'm going to jump into some of the prepared questions that we have and kind of bring people into a different part of your world. You are known for being a researcher, but you also have ushered in several different generations of entrepreneurs in their beginning journey as they're figuring out what they want to do. You and the team give them such a foundation. I was extremely impressed with and definitely was like, I want to be a part of this. What can I do? How can I help? So I'm going to dive in. The first question is, what do people consistently misunderstand about starting and building a business? Because I know you've done the research, plus you have the practical application, plus you're talking to people that are literally trying to do it all the time.
yeah, there's a whole list of things that people consistently get wrong about. First is that they think it's an undisciplined process and it's just a special kind of person. Entrepreneurship is very much a disciplined process. There's a process to follow along, business concepts, etc., that become very relevant along the way. People tend to just think in terms of the creativity side, coming up with an idea. That's just only the beginning. Hundreds and thousands of people who have ideas who never bring them out to launch them. Okay. So it's so much more than that. And you can learn those skills. It's not something necessarily innate. You can learn those skills along the way to help you launch those businesses. And so in turn, people think it's kind of hard to do. And
Mhm.
it's not easy, but if you're disciplined yourself, it's definitely something faster. Also, I find a lot of entrepreneurs early on They think they don't really need to understand business. They can go ahead and just launch their business. And I've never met an entrepreneur who's been at it for a while say that I don't need to know business. They always say, "Yeah, I wish I knew more about business. I wish I paid attention. Maybe I should take some
Yes.
classes, accounting, marketing, etc." So I always see business as a very important part of your entrepreneurship training and your journey along the way. Misconception is people think they need to do something new, never seen before in the world. I've seen students give up and others
Yeah.
give up. They're like, oh, somebody else is doing that. That's not true. Incremental innovation, just some small improvements or value added to something that's already out there, can be the start of a foundational business. And
Yeah.
another misunderstanding is first mover concept. You have to be
Mm.
the first out there to do
Yep.
it, otherwise you won't be successful. There's a whole bunch of research and that quite often the first movers are not the most successful. Facebook is not the first mover, okay? What you can learn from others that are already in the space and do something a little bit differently and be a second, third, fourth mover can actually be a
Yeah.
very profitable position. So many entrepreneurs want to move quickly, and moving quickly is not a bad thing. But if you're not quite ready or you need to know a little bit more, it's not going to necessarily be a negative as well. So I always hear,
Yeah.
move first, move.
I love what you just said. I just did a post a few days back, actually, and I was talking about product skill versus business skill. It's interesting. You just basically is proving my point. Like, it's not that a lot of people are, I call product skill like their craft. It's the thing that
Right.
people pay them for, that they are known, for doing. And then the business skill is really how things step within your system. Right? So how do bills get paid? How does the payroll happen? How do you hire? How do you handle your customers? And it is extremely important. And honestly, the two, I wouldn't say there's one important over the other, but definitely without the second one, you're not going to last. How about that?
That's right.
Going to last. And so something that I really want people to hear, which is you don't have to create something new. I think I even struggled with this, right? I had, a very long corporate career and then, going out and doing consulting. Okay, well, what should I do? What should the consulting be? And then learning to not pull so far away from what I had already been trained in and had all of this knowledge. And to your point, it can just be slightly different. It does not have to be wholly different. I mean, those things definitely do happen, but look at how many burger joints there are. Look at how many to-go places there are. And now we've got 50,000 brands of water, right? And so they're not all different, is my point. So I think that's a very practical way, but it doesn't have to be that. And I think that another thing you talked about was resiliency and the fact that some people tend to give up before the iron strikes. And it's just like, you were so close. And with a little bit of mentoring and, you know, support, you could do it, right? And it doesn't, I mean, many people make a living off of small businesses. It doesn't have to be the next McDonald's, and McDonald's didn't start as what we know it as today. All of these different companies, they start small, right? With different ideas that then they learn how to hone, pivot, expand all these different things. And so, anyway, that's to give some hope to those that are on the fence, let's just say, about what do I do? I always like to try and do that. So the other part is I always think of entrepreneurship. You mentioned it as discipline. But what's the foundational principles that you think separate sustainable ventures from short-lived ones? So we just talked about the fact that, the product, what I just said, product versus that business skill. And definitely if you don't have the business skill or people that have it to partner with, that's going to be something. But what else?
Okay, I have to sit a little closer. So resiliency for sure. Okay. I see sometimes entrepreneurs get very excited about an idea, try and move it forward. And then when things get a little tough, they kind of give up. So definitely that resiliency is a piece there. But even for those who are committed, there's some very specific business concepts and knowledge that makes a difference. And I see most entrepreneurs, honestly, do not think about this before they start. They start with a product idea solving a problem, but they don't think about the business and how they're creating a competitive advantage. Okay. So this is coming from concepts specifically in strategic management as a discipline. What is your core competency internal to the company? It's not a product, it's what you do that's different because that's going to help guide your business. help understand how you're creating value to customers that can proliferate beyond one particular product. Okay. But
Mhm,
also how you're creating that competitive advantage in the market as well, and understanding what you're offering that's out there. Many of the entrepreneurs that I've met don't build their businesses in a way that leverages that. And then they either start to falter, they can't compete, or they run into this wall, what I call competitive parity or competitive disadvantage, that they're just not as competitive as what's out in the market or new competitors have moved in. But also, if they're at competitive parity, they're constantly fighting for market share. But
mhm,
understanding who you are as a business and what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're creating value for the customer beyond just a product per se can
mhm,
really make the difference on sustainability. I've seen businesses where I've recommended, you're making some money now, but you don't have a competitive advantage here. You're not doing anything that's just going to sustain the business. You might take the money you're earning and reinvest that into a new idea, because eventually you're going to falter. And if you get
mhm.
an opportunity for an acquisition, take it, because you only have maybe 2 years of life left with this. But it's understanding that gives them that foresight. And so many entrepreneurs, unless they've had that very specific training or been mentored in that space, do not understand that. And particularly core competence, that's well beyond what your product creates value and how it's different, but also what is the heartbeat of the organization, or you as a founder, which is quite often where it resides when you're starting a business. What are you providing that's different? You might have a specific knowledge base or expertise or something that you're able to do that's different than other entrepreneurs in this space. And how are you leveraging that? And what's really cool about this is because once you really understand that, you no longer become a follower. You're not
Yeah.
following all the other businesses in this space. You're leading your own path. It's kind of scary in a way, but
Yes.
you understand who you are and what you're offering,
Yeah.
and it's different sometimes than the path of the other competitors out there, and that's when you become a sustainable business. So, it's a nuanced
Yeah.
approach, and I've
Yeah.
talked to you about this a little bit more
Yep.
too. I see this
Yeah.
as a gap, and sometimes you see it as a venture that will falter. They
Yeah.
run out of a business, or they just get eaten up by competitors, or sometimes we see it emerge as a plateau of business. We're
Mhm.
here, we have so much in sales, but we're really not making any headway beyond this. And once again, it's really coming back to the strategic view of the
Yep.
organization and how did you structure it? But with all the lean startup methodology that's out there, and I'd say the large majority of entrepreneurs are starting or following a lean startup methodology, it
Yeah.
totally bypasses this, and it's just about go, fail fast, and what happens when you wanna expand it to multiple products? What happens
Yes.
when you hit these
Yes.
plateaus, you know? There's so much that's missing as foundational to the organization that then has to go back and be fixed to make
I
it the next level of a business. So I'm really passionate about this because I see
yeah.
this consistently over and over again. It's like, well, what's your competitive advantage? I don't know. We're selling, but are you
Right, right.
maximizing your
But for
sales?
how so I love that you just brought that up. So a couple of things that I want to unpack. There's a ton of new online businesses and another post that I did. You guys gotta go check out my post. But another post that I did, and it was about everyone is telling people to go be entrepreneurs. Like, go do it, go be entrepreneurs, da, 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 da. And it's people, it makes sense. It really does make sense for them. It's not the easy road. I will say that, but nothing is, right? People are being laid off left and right. I was laid off. So it happens. But my point is with what you just said, people are bypassing like the fundamentals. And it's something that my company Bravara, I talk about is listen, I love all of the different technologies, right? I am a fan, I am a user. Yes, sign me up. I love them. But here's the thing that I say you can't forget the basics of business, right? So if you are trying to, in my world, solve a business problem, you don't just throw a piece of technology on that problem. No, you actually unpack the business case. Like, what is it that I'm trying to solve? What's wrong with it? You mentioned lean. I've used Kaizen, which is another methodology. And it's basically like break it apart and act like you're going to build it brand new and then figure out what is the actual right way to do it versus the way that you had to do it, maybe just to get by, in a rush. And it really works. It really works to be able to like slow it down. So I'm constantly trying to talk to people about slowing. I understand AI is fast, but I want to slow the train down for what we are using it for. Does that make sense? Like any other technology, let's not lose our shirts and, like just throw this piece of technology at these problems when some of these are inherent in your business and technology is not going to fix it. What it's going to do is amplify it faster. Right. And so the carnage, let's just say, starts to materialize a lot quicker because you didn't go back and actually figure out a real use case for what you were trying to solve for and really understand why it wasn't working and what would be a best practice to make it better.
Totally agree.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so here's another one. Oh, no, I want to go back to this. So, how do you feel about all the online businesses? And do you feel that there is a difference between the brick and mortar business and what it needs to have to survive versus, service businesses that are, so brick and mortar most of the time, let's just say being a B2C, and then, maybe services being a B sometimes a lot of B2B and some B2C. Like, what do you feel like you can either break all three down, but give people a little bit about what you feel helps those different types of businesses to survive? Sure.
AI is a facilitating tool for every business at this point. So to ignore technology would not be a mindful strategy for any entrepreneur, but it's a leveraging it in a proper way. There's still a lot of problems with AI, and to me, it never will replace human ingenuity and human creativity and thought process to a level. It's only good at integrating what's already out there. And you got to
Yep.
remember also what's on the internet. There's a lot of junk out there too. There's a lot of people putting content out there that is just downright incorrect.
Mhm,
So,
mhm,
you have
mhm,
to be mindful and aware of what you're using in your businesses. But as far as bricks and mortars and service businesses, to me, you can have a brick and mortar service business. I mean, HR and
mhm.
Block is a service
Yeah.
business that is
Uh,
bricks and mortar. So it really kind of depends on the business model that you need. But my mindset is always that entrepreneurs shouldn't do anything more than they need to. We want to minimize your costs. If you don't need a physical facility, then you don't want to have a physical facility, or
Right.
that's something that you can build in time. But it does add a level of legitimacy to your business if you have a
Mhm,
physical office space or a place that's residing that. But I don't think there's a difference. We use the word product and service interchangeably a
mhm,
lot in when we think about entrepreneurs because it is a product. A service is a product. A
mhm,
process is a product. You could sell a process innovation to a manufacturing facility, and that
mhm.
becomes a product to them or a service to them. So
Yeah.
it's all kind of interchanged together. But I would always say that using technology is kind of a precursor to anything. And anything you can replace with physical facilities is not a bad thing unless you absolutely need it. But all the businesses, in some way, somehow, are still using some of the same fundamentals.
Yeah. Well, and that's the point is that it really isn't a real true difference because the things that I was talking about with a product versus a business skill, those are still interwoven in every kind of business, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
matter, every kind of business. And so that's the opportunity to use technology, let's just say, in the appropriate places where it makes sense. So here's another one. Why is clarity of a problem and market often more important than inventing something new? So, we talked about in the very beginning that you don't have to come up with an original idea. You can improve on something that is already out there. But what do you think?
Okay. Well, there's two different ways to innovate, first of all. Okay. There's the problem solving method, which is what we call a market pull method. Okay. That you're figuring out what problem there is. You may have a problem yourself or a problem that you see some of your customers are experiencing or some of potential customers are experiencing, and you go in to solve that problem versus what we call a technology push process, which is coming from research and development. So you're developing something entirely new that maybe hasn't been seen before in the market, but in turn, it's not solving a problem yet because people don't know they have a problem. So that
Mhm,
changes the whole paradigm. So to me, I see them as two different processes, but 95% of the innovations out there are problem solving, market driven issues. Okay. You see a
mhm,
problem, you want to fix it. We teach students that way. Engineering students are taught that way. So they're going out into the workplace thinking about problem solving method. So I always like to share that there are the two different ways. And there's very different marketing. So
mhm,
market is important for both of them. If you have a problem solving method, you're asking customers what could be better. customers are only going to be able to perceive the current product and how to make it better. They're never going to envision something totally new.
Right.
So if you're
Mhm.
following the problem solving process, you're always going to be limited to incremental innovation for the most part.
Mhm.
That you're seeing some problems talking to customers, talking to, potential customers, et cetera. Whereas in a technology push process, you have to educate the consumer. You have to
Mhm.
tell them they have a problem, or here's
Mhm.
how you're doing it now, and
Yeah,
here's
they're
how.
unaware.
So your marketing campaign becomes an educational campaign as well. So you're
Mhm.
teaching them along the way. So to me, they're just two different processes along the way. Problem solving is much easier for most people to get a handle on for entrepreneurs saying, I'm experiencing a problem, or I see a problem in society that I want to fix, etc. And then, but I would say that the market is important for both parts of the process. So having clarity is important, even if an idea is coming through R&D, like Post-it notes. The
Yeah.
glue that came with Post-it notes was an R&D outcome. So
Mhm.
even then, you have to have clarity about market along the way. So I see them as two distinct things, and not one should be over the other.
Mhm.
But like I said, most people are in the problem solving mode and always having clarity of market, and that's part of the thing. That's what
Yeah.
customer discovery process is all about is here's a problem identified. Here's my problem statement. Let me go out and talk to potential customers about their problems. Not my
Mhm.
solution yet, but just the problems that they're having and see whether I have clarity about what that problem really is. And it's not a symptom, which is a huge distinction. So to
Yeah.
me, it's the distinction between symptoms and problems along the way. Market is always important. You have to
Yeah.
understand in the end who's going to buy it, who is
Yeah.
your customer, because sometimes we get confused between customers. You talked about B2C, B2B, or B2G, but also
Mhm.
who are the users and beneficiaries. And they're not always the same as the customers, although they're
Yeah.
equally important in their own way. So
Yeah.
lots of
Yeah.
nuances in that regard.
And absolutely. And I think a lot of companies use that through a discovery phase, right? When they are trying to actually, this is after, you have your company, but then now you are bringing customers in. And so in order to keep them, you want to do a discovery. I need to understand what your problem is today. I need to
Right.
understand, we call it pain points or different things like that. Some of the folks
Right.
that I worked with, we called it
Yes.
pain points. And so we wanted to understand, like, what are those actual pain points? Does our solution actually solve for
Hmm.
those pain points, right? And that's what you're looking to either qualify in or qualify out. Are we a good fit? Can we be partners? Or I don't think this is what you're looking for. And to be able to move on quickly to the next person that actually could be suited for you. So I think in application, that's what we call it. But there's something that you and I discussed that I know you're working on with the Entrepreneur 101 class, which is the customer discovery. Can you just talk a little bit more about that academically in the way that you are actually helping the students to learn that? Because I think it's something that everyone can always have a refresher on, because that is also when we talk about the product versus the business skill. If you don't know how to go out and get customers, right, and solve for their problems, then also you won't be in business very long, because that's a part of the journey, is to understand who you're serving and how best to serve them and attract them.
Right. So customer discovery is a lean method. Steve Blank came up with the concept. And it's also something that the National Science Foundation is totally digging into with their innovation core programs, which we have here at CSUN, and it's available at many major universities. The idea is that you take a step back and say, we have a problem statement. This is the problem we want to solve. But do we have the right problem statement? Do we really have the right problem described? And so it's a listening tour. You're going out and talking to potential customers of your solution, but you're not talking about your solution yet. You're not pitching anything. And tell
Mhm.
me about your problems related to whatever.
Yeah.
So, whatever context, if it's about art programs in your child's school, tell me about the art programs in your child's school and any challenges that you've seen. You have a solution to what you think
Yeah.
are the challenges, but they might talk about totally different challenges that they
Mhm.
perceive, and it can involve hundreds of interviews. And the process is that you go out and talk to, let's say, 5 potential customers, and then you come back and you evaluate. What did you
Mhm.
learn? What's right? Do you need to adjust it for the next round of people? And so you're learning to fine tune what that problem really is, because this in turn will change what your solution is. So before you even get into prototyping, we
Yeah.
see so many people in general saying, I have an idea. let me set it up. I got a web page. Here's my app. Here's all the functionalities.
Yeah.
Here's everything kind of can do. And they don't have clarity on what the real pain point is, the
Yeah.
problem for the
Yeah.
customers. And now they've spent a year developing something that is not going to solve the problem. And in the end, and it's also the degree of pain that you're trying to figure out. Okay, they have a problem. We have the right problem statement, or we can adjust that. But then you also ask them in this process, how do you solve it?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
how is your solution not awesome? Well, I solve it this way. It's not totally awesome, but it's fine. Well, now they're not willing to pay for a solution because they
Yeah. Yeah.
so this is kind of part of the process of clarifying early. It's the lean methodology is about fail fast.
Right.
So
Mhm.
finding out, do you have the right problem? And then is the solution you created fitting that problem? And is there enough pain to actually have customers want to pay to solve the problem? And it's kind of an early step. So customer
Yeah.
discovery is done before you actually come up with your actual product, before you even get into prototyping and development at all. So the students in my class only have to do like 15 interviews. But if they are in a formal customer discovery process, it's hundreds
Yeah.
of interviews until you
Yeah.
start hearing consistently the right thing. And it's very hard, especially for the younger generation, to go out and talk to people
Mhm. Mhm.
and
Mhm.
not say, because if you go out and say, "Here's my product. What do you think?" People are gonna say, "Oh, it's great."
Right.
So you're biasing it. They're gonna be nice to your face, getting valuable information. And are you gonna
Right.
buy it? Well, maybe, and that's kind of
Yes.
the end of that.
Yes.
And you
Yeah.
never realize that maybe your product is missing the mark. But
Yeah.
also when we get into the concept of MVP, minimal viable product, when you're developing a product, and this is services, this is
Okay.
products, all of them. What's that first develop prototype that you're going to use for your beta? If you know the pain point, you're going to know what features are critical and what
Absolutely. And
features are nice to have. Everybody wants nice to have bells and whistles, but the critical
yeah.
ones have to be there. If you have the nice to haves as your first version, you're not going to sell them. The
Yeah.
critical pieces, so that customer discovery also helps you understand what the critical components of your product are going to be, because that's where you're
Yeah.
going to start your development process. So
Yes.
it's a learning curve for the students to do that.
Yeah.
And, being in a program like Launch Angelino's, I realized the students who have been through our entrepreneurship program, either here or elsewhere, knew what customer discovery was.
Yeah.
And all the other entrepreneurs who may have even launched their businesses had no clue. They think it's
Right.
marketing. I said, it's not
Well,
marketing.
what's so interesting that because of my industry experience, we did that all the time. Like you're constantly doing that. I mean, and maybe in technology and manufacturing widely used that
Yeah.
you continue to dig deeper because if you can't actually, it influences everything, right? If you don't understand who they are, what they're struggling with outside of your product, but in this area or lane, then it's
Mhm.
very difficult to build on that, right? To actually speak to them. I'm constantly talking to folks about being able to speak to who it is you're trying to actually serve. Like, do you know what they like, where they hang out? I say, okay, who's going to get you the check? I love that you have these ideas, but I'm like, who is the person that is going to I said, you're not doing this just because it's a hobby. It is something that you're trying to build. And in order to do so, you need to be very intimately aware of who you're trying to build and actually service with your business. And so, industry experience, we do that all the time. Large companies have the budget to be able to do that kind of work and to continue to refine it because things evolve. So, as we go into more technology, people are looking for more efficiency gains to be able to kind of latch onto. So, I have this problem, but this new technology is out. Tell me how it can help me in this, for solving this problem. So industry experience, thankfully, I worked with some amazing folks and we did that all the time. Like that is definitely not something that they're unaware of. They're doing it all the time. And it is a continual refinement. I think it's one of the things that sometimes people think you stop. You don't stop. Like you keep learning about, who you're trying to serve so that you can actually market to them better, speak to them better, be in the places that they're in and help them to actually have a real solution that is sticky in their lives enough where they can't feel like, our iPhones. I'm thinking of this, right? People leave the house without it and we're like, I don't have my phone. Same thing with your product. Like, how are you making it so that you are so indispensable in your buyer's life that they feel like I do with this phone when I walk out of the house without it. Actually, I don't feel anything when I walk out of the house without it. But some people literally go crazy if they don't have, whatever that thing is that is they've just become very reliant on. And I wish that for all people, because I think that it's a wonderful thing when you have a product or service that people value. So I think to net it out, that is what that academic exercise is all about, is figuring out, like, not to take advantage of, but to truly understand what the need is. And then to be able to create, for the need. That is when, what do they say? If you do these kinds of things, you'll never feel like it's work. You still will feel like it's work, but maybe you'll have some fun along the way because you actually set out to solve something that people really needed.
And sometimes you find out you're talking to the wrong people in the first place. They care, but they're not the ones writing the check. And that's very important. Totally. Who's writing
Yes.
the check? If it's a children's program or product, it's the parents writing the check. But maybe you're selling to companies who are actually going
Yes.
to get it to their end users or beneficiaries. And customer discovery, especially for new entrepreneurs, which in our students, that's what we have, but I see it out in the marketplace as well. Once you're a serial entrepreneur, it starts to come together and you start to become very mindful of the whole process holistically. When we're in programs like Launch Angelinos, we're taking them step by step by step, because if you miss steps, they're not thinking holistically yet because they don't have all
Yes.
these skills down. But who is your customer is an
Yeah.
essential question, and it's not always so clear. You think, and then you
Yeah.
realize you don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it could be a business and not even the end consumer, which changes everything. The
Mhm.
problem, the solution, but also how you're marketing changes dramatically on who your customer is. So it's an essential foundational block. Totally agree. And companies are always in
Yep.
touch with their customers asking questions. But for
Mhm.
a new founder, they don't have customers yet. So they
Right.
don't know who to talk to and they don't have that pipeline of information. And they have to get out there. And like you say, it's a constant thing
Yeah.
because
See, right? Yeah.
Right. Socially, cultural
Yep.
demographics change. What people want change. Your
Mhm.
business may become obsolete eventually if you're not continually changing and being agile in what you're offering and meeting the needs
Yeah.
of your customers. So,
Yeah.
yeah, without a doubt. So,
Yeah.
we kind of walk the students through the process so they learn how to do it.
Yes. I always go ahead. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
And hopefully they kind of understand what it's all about. And when they're formulating their problem for the very beginning, then, because we have them come up with a problem they experience first, and then we go from
Yeah.
there. But eventually it'll become part of their formulating a problem in itself. Just going out and talking to people and thinking about this. What kinds of challenges do you have? So it just becomes a natural part of their entrepreneurial spirit, so to speak.
Yes. Well, and it's those are the things that I think when we go back to that very first question about what can make or break and what foundationally need, it made me think about the whole Blockbuster and Netflix. Blockbuster being, we all frequented it. It was a way of life on the weekend. Go and look through the aisles and for your favorite movie and check out. And then Netflix comes along. And when I hear that Netflix had the opportunity or, to actually partner with Blockbuster, and there was something on the horizon in the customer, right? The customer was evolving. And so that activity of going into the store and picking up that movie, was starting to shift. And because it was so lucrative for Blockbuster at some point in time, I'm probably not getting all the facts all the way right, but close. They missed the opportunity of Netflix. And now Netflix is on top, right? And they have to continue to evolve in order to stay when it comes to getting our attention and meeting our needs. But it worked, right? Bringing those movies into our home, bringing that entertainment into our home totally expanded it for everyone. And all of a sudden, nobody wanted to go to a Red Box or a Blockbuster and pick up anything anymore. So it's a critical lesson, I think, for people to try and stay in tune with who they're serving. Who are you building for? Who is the person that you want to actually consume your product and actually value it? You got to stay in tune, with where they're going and how their needs are changing. So here's another one. Why do founders overlook incremental innovation even though most progress happens this way?
I think it's a mindset going back to what we talked about before is that they feel it has to be something entirely new for it to be a success. And actually, that's very difficult to do You have to have deep R&D, something that's not existing out there. So you have to have really deep technical kind of knowledge to create something like that. And then it's a whole challenge to get out into the market because then you're going to be that first mover. Everybody is going to take all your mistakes, all your
Yeah.
challenges that you finally rectified getting out to the market and then doing it better and much quicker.
Yeah.
Incremental innovation is where most are. I said 95% of innovations out there are incremental in nature. So I'd say founders who are focused on more radical innovations are either coming out with their doctorate degrees and out of a university lab, which it
Yeah.
happens. I met a young man in Michigan Tech who came out. He was coming out of the geography program, and he created a infrared system to detect potential mudslides before they occurred.
Mm.
Now that is an innovative
Yeah.
innovation at the time. That's where they're coming from. So
Yeah.
in those
Mhm.
cases, they will be successful. But for most who do not have those deep knowledge bases to draw from to create that, or not working in an R&D environment, they shut down. They're like, somebody already has it, so thus that's a bad idea. Let me go find a new idea. And I think the lesson is like, no, it's okay. You do have to challenge yourself and say, what value added am I providing? If I make an incremental improvement, it has to meet a need to a customer that the other competitors are not meeting to
Mhm.
be able to
Mhm.
get part of that market. But other than that, I think most of it is coming from incremental innovation. So it's just a mindset that you have to do
Yeah.
something new. I actually had somebody tell me once, well, everybody's invented everything already. There's nothing more to invent. And I'm like just looking at them like, what? You clearly are not a creative person, but AI is like the internet now. The internet changed the way we do business, right? And we
Yeah.
thought we'd be paperless. We're not. I have
Yeah.
tons
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
paper around me. And we
Yeah.
think AI is going to be the big solution. It's probably not, like you said. Let's slow it
Yeah.
down. It's not going to be the big solution necessarily that we see, but it's definitely going to be a part of what
Yeah.
our future is in some way, some shape, some form. And we should be playing with it. We should learn. We're teaching
Yep.
students about it as well. But it's all about how you can apply. So it's creating a whole new wave of businesses that can do old business models in a new way or a better way using
Yep.
AI technology. Well,
Mhm.
this is incremental innovation, but using technology to facilitate that. So become
Yeah.
aware. Same with, like I said, the internet. It was e-commerce
Yes.
changed
Yeah.
over how we sell things. Now you can become a global competitor so quickly, where
Mhm.
before you had to be in a local market. It's like, wow, now I can
Yes.
sell all over the world. It doesn't matter where
Yes.
I am as long as I can ship things to them. And if it's a
Right.
service, I can provide it. And then Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom took off as a technology, especially during
Mhm.
COVID. It existed, but it got
Yes.
so much better during COVID. And they now have uh, HIPAA approved Zoom as well for
Mhm.
confidentiality, so you can do
Oh,
counseling
nice.
sessions, share medical information,
That's so
etc.
good.
You
Yeah.
need to know how these technologies are going to enhance it because they become
Yeah.
incremental opportunities on an existing business model. How do we do it better? That's,
Yeah. Yeah.
so they're all there. And sometimes you just have to do enough research to see how you're doing it better. Is it efficient, lowering costs, or is it creating something new, a new value to your customers? But
Yeah.
I find that those who are looking for the new thing that's not out there, either they shut down or they have the deep skills and they can go ahead and execute it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a tough road.
It is, and talked about internet, and actually, I was a part of one of the companies that it's called Net Zero. Some dear friends of mine started a long time ago, and was basically giving the internet on a disk and mailing it to you, and you were putting it into your computer and dialing things up. At any rate, my point is, no one at that point in time, that's 25 years ago, right, could have
Right.
imagined what the internet would be to us today. But those friends, well, thank God, they actually did see that this is something big and they jumped on it in the very beginning. So kudos to them. That's actually how I started my career in tech. Being able to be a part of all these emerging technologies. And this is why, for me, AI is another tool, right? I get that, the foundation, guys, I'm like, it hasn't changed. Like, you still need to do the right due diligence before deploying the tool so that you make sure you get the maximum efficiency. And guess what? The tool is not foolproof. There's still things that are not working as well as we want them to. In the beginning, when the internet first came out, there were a few different companies and then they get cannibalized and you get, like the top 5 or something like that that end up surviving. But it's similar to what's going on with AI. There's a ton of companies eventually there will be some cannibalization of, but there's opportunity before that happens for
Right.
these companies, like what you said, if your idea isn't gonna like go the distance, get in there and create something great and of value that maybe can be monetized in a different way and actually give you some type of exit for your idea, which also is a good thing. Okay. I got another one for you. When does organizational structure begin to matter in a meaningful way?
When things start to fall apart, okay. Most founders will start a business based on what we call a simple structure, right? Everything is around them. You might be a one-person operation. Everything is kind of happening through you, by you, etc. You might hire a few employees, but they're just an extension of you. They're always
Yes.
reporting back, right? And you're kind of directing them, etc. And then as the business grows, it becomes a problem because we all have cognitive limitations. We can only hold so much in our brain. Some are better than others, but we still have limitations. When you start seeing customer complaints,
Yeah.
loss of sales,
Yeah.
plateaus of sales or loss of sales, loss of profitability, loss of employees,
Mhm,
because they're
mhm.
burning out. This is when you realize sometimes this is what's interesting too. Sometimes founders don't always recognize the source of the problems.
Yeah, yeah.
And it goes
I
back to
help them
those
try and figure that out.
strategic,
So, yeah, it's true.
right? They're like, okay, we just need more marketing because we're losing sales. Well,
Yeah,
no, it possibly is you have employee turnover. So
yeah,
employee turnover means you have inexperienced employees who may not be connecting with your customers in a proper way. Or maybe you're not getting supplies out to them, or you say you have something in stock and you don't have it in stock. So there's lots of reasons why things
yeah,
can fall apart. And sometimes everything is just a symptom and going down to the core problem. And sometimes it's a structural issue. And
yeah. Oh my
structure
gosh.
is about creating the next level. So usually from a simple structure and organization, it's kind of a natural progression
Yeah,
structures. It will
yeah,
go to what we call functional structures. So now, okay, we need a functional structure. What are the key functions of our business? Well, maybe we need a marketing department, a finance department, maybe an operational department if you're in
huh,
manufacturing, whatever it is, the key pieces. And you're going to hire qualified people who are going to be in charge. So not every
yeah,
employee is running to you as the founder anymore, and you're going to kind of let those individuals guide their respective areas
yeah,
because things are not going to fall apart. So structure becomes very important because if a founder quite often doesn't want to let go, can't evolve and let qualified people take over and has to have everything running through them, they're going to slow it all down. So it's
oh my goodness, yeah,
understanding where the problems are, why they're having the problems, and then
yep,
getting those experts in. So it's a natural kind of thing. But we actually see that in some even larger businesses where the owner is like, oh, everything come through me. You have to let go. I was asked by a student yesterday saying, how can I grow my business without losing control? I said, define control. If you have qualified employees, you trust them and you
yes,
check in with them, let's say once a week, or you trust them to let you know
yes,
they're hitting a major decision point, you're not losing control.
yeah,
You're doing controlled growth with a good team of people that you can work with.
yeah,
So, but structure is the foundational because
yep,
there are strategic concepts and strategic strategies you can follow. But if you don't have the right structure to support it, things are
yep,
still going to fall apart along the way. But
yeah,
I'd say in first instances, there are customers are complaining or silence from customers. They're just disappearing because not
yeah,
everybody will vocalize complaints. Sales are
mhm,
dropping off, plateauing. What's going on? And is it because the organization's just trying to handle one person as a central hub and it doesn't work as a company grows? So structure is very, very important, but also the culture of the organization also
yeah,
matters
yeah,
because if you have a collaborative culture versus a hierarchical culture, very different again. So,
yeah.
when things start falling apart, you should be looking back and saying, what's going on? And hopefully you realize it before it falls apart. That's the
Well,
key.
hopefully. And so here's the thing, if you don't, Bravara is here. I am here to help usher you through that. That is literally, it's such a great lead in to some of the work that we do because it is structural. And I think quite often people want to believe it's all of these other things, and it is quite
Yes.
often structural. Like it literally, when we just talked about the product versus the business skill, There is that's structural. The business skills are the structural pieces that actually help to support the craft, support the product or the service. And if all of those are not working the right way, you're going to feel tension. As a founder, you're going to feel really fatigued because everything has to run through you. You have to fix it all. You have to be all of that tribal knowledge has not been transferred, let's just say, into qualified individuals to help you support the dream. And if that doesn't happen, right, the pulls and the stress, and not to say that it's not stressful regardless, but it is even more stressful if you don't have the right team and structure in order to support it. I get to talk to a lot of industry entrepreneurs that are out there and how they're running their companies, how they feel about technology, how they feel about their structure. And it's so interesting. Like, it's not similar to what you said, it's not a new thing, right? It is something that has been like breaking companies for a long time. And I think the first lever that people pull is it's got to be something more external than it is the internal. And a lot of times it's definitely the internal. So Bravaro, we help to come in and unearth that and actually right the ship. Again, the product and the business skill, like not forgetting that foundation. It's like you can have the most brilliant idea that people love and it will fall apart if the structure weakens and doesn't have the right kind of support and expertise in which to fuel it. When you have customers that are delighted, in what you are offering, then you get more customers and they stay longer, once that happens. This is my last question. Where do you see the biggest gap between academic research and how founders actually operate? Oh, yes.
Okay. I think in the dialogue it goes in. Okay. So there is a big gap between academic research and practice. There's a lot to be learned in academic research.
Yeah.
I'm in that space. For example, my research is in currently socio-tech entrepreneurship, technology-centric ventures, not facilitated, but like a company that has an engineering technology patented or is an AI provider. Okay, so
Hmm.
they're using technology not to help them, but to be a core part. Also, want to have a social impact. It's a very unique type of business. We're seeing a lot of interest among young space. Social impact is very much. We're even seeing social impact coming into business schools as accreditation,
Hmm.
etc. Very nuanced development process. Okay? These are businesses that have social impact in their mission statement. They don't know whether they should start as a nonprofit, an LLC, a partnership, or a hybrid benefit corp. And then there's different models along that way. They also get an enormous amount of pressure when they actually do get equity into businesses, get rid of that social impact and go with profit. So there's a lot to be learned about different
Yeah.
kinds of businesses and how to do. A purely social venture is going to be developed differently than a tech venture as independent entities. All social ventures need to be nonprofits. Sometimes when I use the word social venture, we have a social entrepreneurship course even here. And people are like, why do we need that? We don't teach nonprofit skills. This is social impact.
Yeah.
All of the knowledge that we're learning about that is coming from academic research. You got to realize every textbook is written from academic research. That's the fight.
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
So we don't want to discount that along the way. And we're learning a lot about the nuances of entrepreneurship as
Yeah.
well as a research discipline. What people don't understand is it's not a one size fits. I like to think of it as like a triple X, like DNA, like a technology innovation within a has to have its own development process, separate from the business development, separate from social impact, but not separate, but integrated together.
Yeah.
Those are all
Hmm.
pieces of the organization. We tend to think that the product is ready, we're ready to go, we're going to make profit, and we're just going to apply these skills. And so it's not a one size fits all, but this is what's coming from the research, and it's not getting translated into practice very well. The problem is academic research is difficult to understand. It's written in academic lingo. I don't argue that. I think we're going to see some shifts up because AI and take
Yeah.
a lot of this content and create it into like white papers
Yep.
where it can be more easily understood. You can pop in a research paper and say, write this at the level of a high school student.
Yeah.
Have a general understanding. So there is that gap of the knowledge, and you have to understand within academia, we are rewarded by where we publish
Mm.
as academic journals. So we are not necessarily rewarded to write something that a practitioner cannot. But I
Yeah.
think AI is going to fill that gap. And companies that do that, I think, are very valuable. But there are
Yeah.
outlets out there that do this. Harvard Business Review, Academy of Management, and also like Thunderbird
Okay.
business review. There are some
Hmm.
publications out there that do that, but it's not just entrepreneurship, it's all sorts of business. They take
Yeah.
business research and try and explain it practical perspective. How can you not just understand it, but so, but that's the gap right now. But like I said, I think AI is going to start bridging that gap.
Yeah, for sure.
I think a lot of the practice on an entrepreneurship is very standardized and very one size fits all. Shift that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's happening within universities, offering specialized courses, offering not changing the learning pieces, but there's no textbooks covering some of it. So it's
Yeah.
textbooks lag about 5 years generally.
Yes. Yes.
And so taking it from there and then moving, this is going to, like I
Yeah.
said, people who want to take access to a lot of these articles in white paper form, foundation,
Yeah.
and organize them in a way that makes sense for people sift through. So then reach back out to the originators of the article if you have questions. I
Yeah.
think that's a real potential.
And I'm just going to share with you, there's a tool, Notebook LM, that I use. Literally, you can take those resources and you add them into Notebook LM. You can add links, videos, PDFs, all kinds of different media types. And it will do a mind map, quiz, PowerPoint, a podcast. So what I think is very interesting is, and I have one son who's getting his master's and another son who is a college age student. And the time in which they're learning, although I sometimes think is scary, I think the tools at their disposal for learning the way you learn, to your point, synthesizing that information so that it meets every kind of learner, right, is going to be very beneficial to society, but especially, a way to get out these academic works, sooner into people's hands where they can digest them and actually apply the knowledge from them, I think is a really cool, and it's happening now, right? Notebook LM is available, free version. I love talking to you. I love the theoretical side. I love the academic side and hearing like, how things, originate is very interesting to me, as well as talking about the practical application side, which you're well versed in and understand. And you're constantly looking at the different companies out here and analyzing their activity and what they're doing and working with your students and, all these budding entrepreneurs. So you're getting the best of both worlds, Dr. Joanne, because you get to look at what's out there, but you also get to see these fresh minds and fresh ideas kind of come your way, and you get to pour into them and influence them. And that's one of the things that attracted me to you and Kenny, is that you guys do that kind of work. And it's something that I think we need more of. And I'm really excited to, help along the way in any way that I can. So I'm going to go ahead and close us out. Thank you to Dr. Joanne. She is amazing. I hope that I was able to bring some morsel of knowledge that she has shared with me and shares so willingly with her students and staff members over at Cal State Northridge, which I am an alumni. That is where I graduated from. And I wish that I had known about this program when I was a student. I'm like, I should have did this. This is where I should have been. I would have gotten so much out of it. I applaud you for the work that you do and for blazing the trail in your research. And we don't always know where it came from. We take these, ideals, and then we put them into our business and we start to use them, not understanding exactly where they all originated. I really am very appreciative of the work that you do over at CSUN and just excited to collaborate more. I think this is just a really exciting thing, and keep doing what you guys are doing. And thank you for giving me your time right now. So I am going to go ahead and end this and say thank you just for Dr. Joanne being on Otissa and Company.